If you're looking to get more energy into it, it's always going to start with gesture and not really worry too much in the beginning about anatomy and structure. At first, you're just looking for a sloppy, energetic mess. These forms, these animation form, way more important to know than actual, like, really specific anatomy.
It's better to draw 100 poses in a week than to draw an arm and render it for a week and then wonder why it looks stiff.
Drawing is a tool to convey your idea, not the other way around. You need to convince people of your reality. It doesn't need to be real. You just need to convince them that it's real. You want to start with the IK chain. You want to start with the center mass and work your way.
How does that work?
Hey everyone, I was at Comic-Con and we had a booth there, and while we had the booth we had a setup and we invited a lot of artists to come over to talk about art, do demos, collaboration, explaining their process. And this one I had the honor of having Erik Gist. Erik Gist is a phenomenal artist, teacher. He's been at Watts forever and always been a huge inspiration. Ever since I started out, I studied the way he approached mannequins, and that is exactly what we are going to talk about. I wanted to know how he thinks and further ask direct questions, which I always wanted to ask, and finally I had the opportunity. So thank you, Erik. And also, as always, please hit subscribe and the bell button so that you are aware whenever we upload a new video. It's a small thing you can do, but that will help us create more content and educational videos in the future. So thank you very much. And here's Erik.
Hello everyone, I'm here at Comic-Con with the amazing Erik Gist, illustrator, oil painter, fine artist, instructor at Watts. It's my channel, so I presume that you know who I am, but if not, welcome. I'm a Rembert Montault. I'm a illustrator, animator, mostly animator, storyboard artist. And I'm here actually to ask Erik a lot about figure invention and how he thinks about it and combining methods, because my first question would be, me as an animator, I learned how to, for 4 years long, really simple shapes. And even though I was useful for figure invention, I have a really hard time drawing more like an atelier sort of, like when I look at Repin's drawings or your drawings, and there's so much fidelity to it, and I just learned over so many years to simplify so much that I have a hard time getting away from that simplification and into things that feel a little bit more naturalistic, if that makes sense. Even when I draw anatomy, it's a pattern, but I have a hard time from imagination to make it look more relaxed, more natural. And I think that has to do with proportions, but I'll let you answer that.
If you're looking to get more energy into it, it's always going to start with gesture.
Yes.
And it's better to think of that almost more as a two-dimensional concept and not really worry too much in the beginning about anatomy and structure. You can always bring that in and refine the drawing and build up that solidity. At first, you're just looking for a sloppy, energetic mess. When referring to figure invention, which is what we're talking about. If you're talking about observational drawing, that's a different thing. You've got what you're drawing in front of you, and so you can measure and be precise and be very careful and fastidious about it. But if you're talking about trying to figure invent and get what's in your imagination down on the paper, you need to do a little bit of searching around and finding, because what you're seeing in your mind's eye doesn't always work on the paper, because we've got a movie going on in our head. It's three-dimensional, the camera's moving, time is taking place, but in a drawing it ends up being static. So if you take a still frame out of your imagination and just try to draw it, it's going to end up being static as well.
That's a good point.
Or at least it risks becoming static. You know, the people that are brilliant at it, that's a different ball game. But so you kind of need to find that perfect moment and then that perfect gesture before even moving on to what we would call drawing. So it's kind of finding that idea, finding that emphasis, finding that energy that you're going to try and have be the linchpin of your drawing, which is a bit of what you're talking about. Now, maintaining that is the trick. And what I always try to think about, and what I try to teach my students, is thinking a little bit like a string of pearls. So you're finding your action, so you're finding your sweep, whatever that energy is, you know, just really loosen up and don't even worry about drawing, just finding a nice motion. And I hope that's dark enough. Let me go a little bit darker just in case the camera can't pick it up. So we're looking for just, again, sloppy, it's messy, it's energetic, there's lots going on. And then you just start thinking about stringing forms. And like I said, if I'm using that string of pearls analogy, I'll just stick with that. And you're just stringing forms along that action. So the action is the string and the forms are the pearls. And so you're maintaining that action. And then from there, you can start coming in and building up your form. And so we can start saying, okay, well, we're looking down these and pearls from one direction. So let's wrap around that
The volume around it.
right,
yes.
and you start building up that volume, start building up that dimensionality. But what you're starting with is that action. And if we're talking about animation, it's even, you could even imagine this being like a ball going through the air.
The
Even.
line of action.
Yeah, exactly. Line of action, 100%. So it doesn't even necessarily need to be a contiguous form like an arm or a leg, but it's still the same basic concept. If you want to turn that into an arm, well, then you use arm-like forms. In this case, it could be either. It could be a string of pearls. It could be a ball moving through the air.
A multi-figure composition, like they follow an action line as well.
Absolutely. Any of those things that to imply motion in a static image. So I think that answers your question a little bit. But that's how I think about it when I'm drawing out of my imagination. Is I'm trying to find that energy first, and I have faith in my drawing ability that I can turn that into a good drawing.
Once you add the volumes, it's going to look more stiff anyway. So it's better to exaggerate that.
Exactly.
That first.
Yeah. You want to push that flow. It will die down.
Yeah.
As you add anatomy and information, things will become stiffened up. Exactly. So start with as much energy as you possibly can.
So you have to think like an animator.
Absolutely.
And think about the pose where you came from and where you're going maybe as well. Even if you're doing a static drawing, it's useful to think about
almost in a way, almost more important, because even in bad animation, it has motion.
Yes.
Even if it's bad motion, it is in motion. A static image is never in motion, so you almost need to push it in a way even more. Now, that's not really true, but philosophically it is, because animation is all about movement. So even in that, it's a series of static images.
Like I usually, my teacher told me when he animates, he never works on one single drawing at a time.
Right.
It's like he just wants to see it move directly.
Exactly.
So he's never working on one. So that's why I think as an illustrator, it's probably really useful to imagine that other drawing.
And not even necessarily imagine it. Like sometimes when you're going through your thumbnail process, you'll hear a lot of artists say, do 20, 30, 40, 50 thumbnails, and people who aren't illustrators or people who aren't trained artists will think, well, why am I doing that many sketches? I can't possibly take that. Well, you're not doing 30 individual drawings.
Yeah.
Like 5 of those will be variations on one idea, and you're doing that. You're doing it. Well, where does it go next? Is next more interesting? This is my basic idea.
And it's just gesture drawings.
Yeah, exactly.
Not even gestures. It's like just a line of action.
Yeah, just scribbles. Just scribbling.
And that's where it comes from. Yeah.
And then when you find that energy in a thumbnail that you like, then you flesh those, out of your 30, you don't think of it, I mean, it's not this literal, but you can think of it in groups of 5. So you've got 6 groups of 5. Well, then you take the best one out of each of those ideas, and then you end up with 6 thumbnails. And then you take the 3 of those that are best, and that's what you turn into your art director.
I remember, I don't know if you agree with it. I spoke to another artist once, and he said, I think the best thing to study actually when you start out is animation. If you just study 2-3 years of animation, you can still go in any art form afterwards. And it's better to draw 100 poses in a week than to draw an arm and render it for a week and then wonder why it looks stiff.
So the equivalent for my sort of lineage of teaching would be gesture drawing or quick sketch.
Yes.
We call it quick sketch. Quick sketch and gesture drawing, same basic idea where you're sitting down and you're doing a drawing every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes, every 5 minutes, rather than doing these long drawn out studies where you'll get good at rendering, but you're not really getting that intuitive indoctrination of the figure and the movement. Yeah, exactly.
And also something that I heard once is like an animation drawing is actually really realistic because it has the will to move. Like a realistic drawing doesn't mean it's detailed. It has that it's alive and wants to move. That's what makes it realism. Yes.
Yeah, it's the idea
that
of
wants to move. So you have this concept. You draw gesture lines. Say, for instance, if after drawing ink something, say. Like I would, and I would always think about the hips. I mean, you something like that. You have. It's probably a bit longer, but you have something like that, right?
Sure.
And how, on top of a gesture like this, where do you start then, and where do you usually like? For me, it's the hips and the shoulders, and I would start to flesh that out.
Sure.
But would you start just anywhere, what is convenient in a moment? Or do you have sort of like, this is where my landmarks usually go, and this is where I build from?
So the real answer is wherever you need to start from.
Okay.
That's the real answer, but that's a more advanced, sophisticated answer. If we're talking about fundamentals, which I think is mostly what we're addressing right now, you want to start with the IK chain. You want to start with the center mass and work your way.
How does that work? I have never heard
So
of
an
it.
IK chain, when you're moving, your movement isn't dictated by your arms and your legs. Those follow the motion of your body, and that starts from, for lack of a better term, your center mass.
Okay.
And that's why same thing in animation. You're starting with that line of action, right? And everything is going to bleed off of that line of action. You're then going to have the arms come off of that, and the legs come off of that, and so on and so forth. So as you're working down, each thing is simply following the motion of the thing before it. Essentially, your IK, that's a real dumbed down, simple version of what an IK chain is. So you're following it, say you've got let's start with your shoulders, right? You've got your pit of the neck. Well, that's going to be your cross section of these, and your shoulders are going to follow the movement of your line of action, and then your arm is going to follow the movement of your shoulders, and your lower arm is going to follow the movement of like your forearm can't go anywhere that your upper arm doesn't let it go, and your arm can't go anywhere that the shoulders don't let it go, and the shoulders can't go anywhere that the torso doesn't let it go. So you need to start there. In even simpler terms, if you anyone who's ever done martial arts, there's a saying that the body follows where the head goes. So if you can control the head and shoulders of your opponent, then you're going to control their movement. And it's very much the same way in drawing.
I always thought the eyes move first, but it's the
Well, that's an animation concept, and that's great for animation because generally the character is going to look,
and then the body turns with it.
Right, and then everything else follows suit with that.
Yeah.
So absolutely, it's the same basic concept.
But in fighting, you maybe sometimes don't have time, and you need to control I don't do martial arts.
The eyes turning first, that's an internal thing, not an external thing, because if your eyes were on your chest would turn first because you want to look at what you're looking at, right? So
I've never thought about that. So you can also just if you want to move somewhere and you're still distracted or something, right. It just depends what the story demands.
It's like RoboCop, the old movie. It's like, he's very robotic, so it's an exaggeration of that idea where his head really robotically moves and then the shoulders turn, and it's a slowed down version of what the human body really does, right? Because it's a computer, and so it's doing it in a computerized way.
So when you're designing poses, you also think about interesting to twist the body interestingly, that the face and unless it's from life and the pose is like that, but when you're inventing, you want to
if you're setting up a pose from life, you want to think of those same things. You don't want the model to just sit there and everything's lined up and straight.
Could you balance shoulders, hips? Could you twist your torso a little bit? Could you do like that? Can you look in that direction?
You want to shift axes as much as you possibly can. So if you think of the three main masses, you've got the head, and you've got the rib cage, and I'll try to keep this all on camera, and then you've got the pelvis. Well, in terms of animation, computer animation but even regular animation, each one's going to have height, width, and depth, right? And your movement is going to rotate around each of those axes. Well, you want those axes to differentiate as much as you can between each of those masses.
Like a Rubik's Cube, making sure that every layer doesn't exactly line up.
Yeah. So if the head turns,
you can also turn it like that.
This way, you want the torso to turn this way and the hips to turn back this way. And if the shoulders are tilted this way, well, you want the head to then tilt the opposite direction and the hips to tilt the opposite direction. So you're getting that contrapposto, and the figure isn't just standing. Like you even did it intuitively in your little doodle here, right? We've got the head tilting this way, and then the torso tilting this way, and then the hips tilting this way,
and making sure that it's also you're mirroring the silhouette.
Right.
So that else, you get unless you want that, there could be poses that are like that.
There are times, you've got that Vitruvian man.
Yeah.
It's like, absolutely. And then when you start going beyond that, again, it goes back to that string of pearls analogy. You've already got your string. Now we just need to put the pearls on, though. Well, in this case, the pearls are going to have more simple forms, but for the sake of this discussion, let's keep it super, super simple.
We're going to keep it simple. I think this is already really great because we're not just drawing and trying to. We're talking about the process that goes into your head even before you start putting a line down.
It's always a concept first. Always. It's always a concept first. If you can't think, you can't draw. So if we're doing this, we've got spheres, cubes, and cylinders. You could throw cones in there if you want, but cones are really just tapered cylinders. So cubes, spheres, cylinders. everything on the body we're going to make up of that, but it has to be in very specific combinations.
And these boxes can also twist with the gesture. They're not just rigid. You have to bend them.
Yes,
You have to
absolutely. They don't have to be rigid.
Yes.
They don't have to be rigid. Yes, they can be more organic versions of these, but that's a little bit more advanced.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about this, again, you're getting to that how to draw comics the Marvel way, and once you have your string, you
Yes.
start adding your pearls. Well, we're gonna.
It's a rib. Yeah. Do you think a rib cage more round or an oval?
So here's
It
the
just
funny thing
depends.
for rib cage. I generally conceptualize it as an oval, but I put like a little sort of boxy form on the top. So it's what I would call a compound form. So it's kind of both. So you've got this sort of shoulder girdle section that is connected to the sphere.
Yeah.
And then the pelvis will come down here, and we've got the pelvis.
That works. Yeah.
And let's rotate that just a little bit. So let's show a bit of a side plane.
So those are the asses,
Yes, basically, essentially, yeah.
anterior, superior, iliac spine. So
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be the ilium, basically that wing of the butterfly, right? And let's even tilt it forward a little bit. So we got a little bit of a top plane. So now we're putting that into three-dimensional space.
And that box on the hips is a little bit tilted always.
Yep, just a little bit, yep. So now already we're starting to get something there. I mean, it's very crude.
This one is looking to the left, and it's going to the right.
Yep. So a little bit of a turn to the left, so we're getting that nice
That's great. Yeah, I can
twist
feel
body
that.
like that. To me, for some reason, in my eye, I'm visualizing it as being a back view for some reason, but that's
We can
just,
do that. Yeah.
I mean, it's just the way it emerges sometimes.
Well, now we did the hips a little bit tilting forward, so.
Well, we
I
could
mean,
we
you can
could we
do
could
that.
just imagine that is the
back
invisible plane.
Yes.
Yeah. So we
Okay.
can put instead.
And the front plane in this
Yep,
case. Yes.
Exactly. So if we wanted to, we can put a little bit of a bottom plane like that instead. So we've got that. And then we come in here and we've got the deltoid, which is going to be
Mm-hmm.
a sphere.
Then that is the posterior one, and then goes to the scapula on the
Yep,
back. So let's
exactly, yeah.
follow that.
So we would lock that into.
Where would you put the scapula, the line there? Would that be half from the between
Here?
Here?
It would be closer. It would be
Closer to the
It,
spine.
it would depend on the exact movement because it does slide across the
if,
back.
If you do this, for example, and then much closer.
Exactly.
And if you're,
I would say it's closer to a third. So, but from the shoulder to the
interesting.
spine, it would be closer to a third, and a third.
I'm learning a lot. I always do it in the middle, but like, you should see Erik's anatomy drawings are incredible. So.
And then we can have the upper arm cylinder. Maybe have that coming, the elbow coming back a little bit, and then have the forearm.
So just stoops right now. There's
just real
We're not gonna
simple.
go to the triceps, nothing all of that. Just a tube.
So the way I had it described to me that I really liked is that you're always starting with this, even if it's only in your mind's eye. You're always starting with this because these simple forms are way easier to rotate in three-dimensional space. Hence animation. Right?
Yes.
I mean, it's brilliant, but it's even great for illustration. And then how you skin it will differentiate, animation or an animation style from a more rendered illustrative style, right? So then you would come in and you could add in,
That's what. Yeah.
a tricep. You could start making this more of a deltoid.
And you studied all these insertions and origins, and
I have, but even if you have it, just get out an anatomy book.
Yeah.
Get out a good piece of photo reference. Even if it's not photo reference specific to your figure, you can get it out and find something that you could come in here and skin that onto this simple form that you already have. So it's not really necessarily about having like an encyclopedic knowledge of anatomy. It's about just knowing how to skin those shapes onto the forms that you've already developed. So these forms, these animation forms, way more important to know than actual like really specific anatomy, right?
because
I'm not saying that stuff doesn't help.
no, it does for the final details and everything, and for the ends. But for initially,
Yep.
I would be really curious to know if when you do your oil paintings and the illustrations, do you do really rough sketches like this, with basic planes, no muscles, but like planes of the shadows to compose them, or you just do that intuitively as you're already figuring out?
No, I do that. I do that in my thumbnail phase.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. My thumbnails I do mostly out of my imagination. I don't use a ton of reference unless I feel like I need it to figure something out. But most of it's coming out of my imagination, and I'm doing it exactly like this. Then I'll go and shoot reference to flesh that out and bring it up to that, ideally for me, like a Rockwellian level of finish to my illustration.
He also said compose first from imagination, and then later on have the model. Because if you're just with a model and you don't have an idea, well, maybe you can work that way. Sure.
You can, but I think then you're letting the
model more.
Yeah, you're letting the photo reference dictate the image rather than the other way around. I mean, it's the same thing with perspective. I mean, if we want to get into really, everything,
sure.
Then you
talk about
same
anything.
thing. When you start out sketching, you don't start out like, horizon line, vanishing points. You start out just drawing your image. Like again, you're super sloppy, super loose. Don't even worry about, It's like, maybe I want a building over here, blah blah blah. And then you go, okay, well that's looking to me like I've got a horizon line here. Okay, I want that turned a little bit, so my vanishing point would be over here. Then you start getting that, perspective based off of your slick doodle, and you'll realize that you got a lot of things wrong, but it doesn't matter. Then you're starting to go, okay, then I do this, and then I do this. And it's like you're bringing in the drawing after the idea. Drawing is a tool to convey your idea, not the other way around.
Just to tell the story. And I have a question for you, because I have been drawing the hips and pelvis, these relationships in a certain way. And now that you're here, I want you to check if this is actually the correct way of doing it. So I'll just redraw. So if this is your spine, right?
Okay.
And this is and here's the hips. What I would usually like is a box for the hips. But I always had a problem with mannequins and everything.
Okay.
To combine the chest with the torso.
Right.
So what I did is, what I usually do in my mind right now is, I invent this wedge, a wedge like this. And I don't know if I came up with it, but I'm not claiming anything.
It's a fine way of doing it. That's not entirely different than how I do it.
And then here I just let that go here, because that's where your belly button would be.
Right.
And more like that. And then you can still have it twist, and then here's the assist, and what my teacher always, he hammered animation. It's like draw shapes in one another. So if here, and then you do it this, and then here you could get the feet, but then you would get like a knee for free or something.
Right.
But the proportions are completely off, and he's falling over. So, but sort of this way, this wedge. But for some reason, if you go into more, then I have a tough time if I don't have reference from a real model to make it look naturalistic in a way, going from there. So
okay.
How would you sort of tackle that? I'll leave it to you.
So this is brilliant. It pretty much exactly how you should approach it. I'm going to add a couple of things to it.
Please do, yeah.
So you've got some foreshortening happening here. Obviously, the camera's looking down on this figure. We've got the ground plane down here, right? So the only thing that I would add to this is, okay, so let's see, where to start? Let's start from just...
critique it to the...
Figure out of perspective. Roughly, you're going to have a hand's width between your rib cage and your pelvis. So in flat space, there's roughly a hand's width. So however wide your character's hand is, there's going to be about a hand's width, roughly, between the rib cage and the pelvis in a neutral position. So you need to kind of visualize that as you're going to here, because obviously as you move the camera above the model, that hand's width is going to disappear. It still exists, but optically it will disappear. So when you start getting into that foreshortening, I want to get to this overlap as quickly as possible.
Right.
Like right now, you've got it tangent, right? You've got the bottom of the rib cage touching the pelvis. That may be accurate, but it's always going to be better if you can get to that overlap a little bit quicker. So I would take that rib cage and bump it down as quickly as I can, because that's always going to get you more dimensionality. Because just like in drawing anything, if we've got this object and then we've got this object, Well, by default, this object is coming in front of this object, right? So the quicker we can get
Overlaps. This great
that
depth.
overlap,
Yeah.
yep. It's one of the easiest ways to show depth in a two-dimensional drawing. So the quicker we can get that rib cage to overlap that pelvis, and the quicker we can get the head to overlap the rib cage, the better we're going to get in. And like, already just by doing that, you can see there's more depth to the figure. So that would be my first thing that I would say. You want to get to that overlap as quickly as you possibly can without stunting the figure, without making it too stocky. And then the other thing would be, think about interlocking forms. So you've already got the starting of that idea here. So if we've got our rib cage.
Plus, if I really quick,
Yeah.
drawing like this is actually much better when you're learning, because drawing figures in perspective, you can start distorting, and it's better to learn a figure just standing up, no foreshortening,
Absolutely.
because then you can learn how to get familiar with the proportions.
Absolutely.
And if you start drawing in perspective, then that's why a lot of people think this is hard to draw, but it's just to draw a fist out of context and the smaller head next to
Absolutely.
it. While those classical figures that are standing is really hard.
And that goes for everything.
Yeah.
Anything you're drawing, that's not just figures. If you're going to draw a building, it's good to know what that building looks like out of perspective
Yes.
first to be able to put it into perspective. Otherwise, it's just a lot of guesswork, which is
Yeah.
fine and necessary.
And distortion, so you can get away with a lot of mistakes in a...
Absolutely.
Anyway, sorry, I
No.
just wanted to-
All great information that helps illustrate all the points we're making. So let's say we've got our rib cage. Something like that, very, very simple. Well, then we've got our midsection, but we don't want to just think of that as connective tissue. We want to think of it as its own kind of form, even though it's not a rigid form like a rib cage is. It's sort of a girdle-like form, and it's going to lock up into our rib cage.
So the wedge that I drew for you is this tube in the
Exactly.
middle. Okay.
I'm just taking that even a little bit further.
Interesting. Yeah, that's helping me already.
Then you're going to have the box of your pelvis come in here and lock into that. So
Tapers to the inside.
Yep.
Yeah.
So theoretically, you could almost draw one of these forms without the others, and it would imply the intermediate form. So if we took the rib cage, we could just draw the rib cage like that.
That's the Greek arch, I think they
Yep.
call it. Yeah.
And then you could come in and draw the pelvis, and you could almost imagine that interconnecting form. So you make it, instead of just two forms, the rib cage and the pelvis, which is the reality of it, we're inventing this third girdle form, this imaginary form,
Yeah.
this conceptual form that connects them. And by having them interlock, now as we start throwing it into perspective a little bit more, we can now imagine that form coming all the way from behind the rib cage and locking into that, and then the pelvis locking into that, like little Legos, like little anatomical.
I like it just like Legos, because that's exactly how I think about like when you lock shapes into one another, because then you can turn them around. So,
Yep,
so I can just go here now.
absolutely.
It's
Yep.
and it locks in the same. So that's why it's good to think about that. That it's like a.
And in the case of the knee, it literally works that way. That as that knee bends, that patella, that kneecap slides in and locks into the void, which gives it structural stability in a bent leg, which is why we can, bend our legs and still stand.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, that's why it's much harder to do a handstand than it is. I mean, there's a lot of reasons. One of the reasons why it's easier to do a handstand or to stand than it is to do a handstand, because arms aren't designed for that structural support. We don't have that floating
joint of
bone that fills in the void.
I just learned like a lot from that, because I was just doing this. So there are a lot of those little things that's why I still, when I find time, I want to come to Watts and really because the way that I've been doing things is very from animation, and I really love illustration, and I would love to get better at it. And that's why I hope in the future, because I've been talking with Travis a lot, like if I can come to the Watts and just like refine all those mistakes habits.
It's not even a mistake. It's literally just putting another layer of information onto what you already know. It's like if you knew how to build a house, but you don't know how to paint a house.
Right.
It's like well, there's nothing wrong with the way you're building that house. It's just now you need to go and learn how to be an expert painter.
A little bit more refined, like the portraits you do are also really. I could ask you 1,000 questions and I can keep here all day, but like at some point we'll have to wrap it up.
It's just layers of information. And you can't do those finishing things if you don't understand the more fundamental, foundational, conceptual things. Then you have to learn to do anything. It doesn't matter if it's comic books, animation, even abstract art to a certain degree.
Yeah.
You need to understand these basic foundational concepts. Otherwise, you're just layering good information on top of bad. And it doesn't matter if we go back to the house concept. If you build a poor house, I don't care how well you put the crown molding it. I don't care how well you paint that house. I don't care how well
Foundation
you
has to be.
that house is going to fall down.
Yeah.
It's going to be a piece of garbage.
So you need to dig a hole in the ground first, where you can put the foundation in. So it's like you get a little bit worse before you get better, maybe, because you go down before you go. I don't know.
But no, it's all the same foundational concepts. The things you've learned to be an animator absolutely apply to illustration. It's just in illustration, the emphasis is a little bit more on that final polish, whereas in animation, it's about
quick,
character and
get it out.
movement.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exaggerating.
Yep.
Drawing hands too big.
Yep. And in fact, all of those things can play a part in illustration as well. It's just you need to dial it down a little bit.
Well, just a little bit.
Just a little bit, not much.
Not much.
Not much, because
That's
as
just
you
interesting.
render, that will do it just inherently. It will automatically tone down those exaggerations.
Except if it's Tex Avery, then you got to tone it down a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or John Kay or someone like that. Like, yeah,
It's like
way
this,
over
the
top,
smears
yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah. But that just shows that there's a scale.
Yeah.
You know, there's a scale because Rockwell cartooned a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, his stuff wasn't. I mean, most of his characters, while they're convincing, if they got up and walked around, they'd be freakish. You know,
I think
tiny
like-
little heads, big hands, huge hook noses. You know,
I mean, Frazetta is very animated in that sense,
Absolutely.
which is maybe not as realistic because he always worked a little stylized.
but it's authentic. It's
Yeah.
convincing, and that's the important part. It needs to be authentic and
It's
convincing.
the will to move, like it's going,
Yeah.
it's going to punch
You need to convince people of your reality. You don't. It doesn't need to be real. You just need to convince them that it's real.
Like, these are my rules. This is my will. You accept it because as long as you're consistent with it in your own world.
Or Leyendecker. Leyendecker's another one. It doesn't represent reality really in any way, but you look at it and you're totally convinced of that reality.
Cornwell, same. But it's like I'm not gonna give you the full world. I'm just gonna give you little specs and suggest it. Yeah.
There's a consistency of vision that convinces you that what you're seeing is real.
I mean, it's your own world. Your style. You invite people. Yeah. That's the most important. Yeah. God, I could talk about so much more, but I think we'll have to end it here.
Sure.
So, Erik, thank you so much for joining me, and I learned a lot already with this. So I'm gonna rewatch that video a couple of times.